Hello, everybody. Welcome to Planning Board meeting of February 11th, 2021. On the agenda tonight, we're going to have a presentation by CeCe Doucette on wireless technology, downtown zoning presentation follow-up, and a discussion of some possible zoning bylaw amendment, and then the regular administrative matters and such. So Emma will let you know how to join in here.
Excellent. Thank you, Dale. And just to note that the meeting is being recorded and broadcast by WACA. If you're watching and would like to join, you can go to zoom.us and enter meeting ID 865-1264-6250 and passcode 541553. You can also join by phone by calling 1-646-876-9923 and enter the same meeting ID and passcode. And all this information can also be found at ashlandmass.com on the planning board agenda.
Okay. So I guess to start off, Pete said that he talked to CeCe and we're going to give her, he didn't explain exactly what, I guess it's just a presentation on the wireless, but he said we were going to give you 20 minutes to speak your mind. And so go ahead, CeCe.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, Pete and I discussed 20 minutes for a presentation and then leave about 10 minutes for question and answers, if that's comfortable for you. Okay. If you could give me screen sharing privileges, that would be a help.
Okay, you should be able to share your screen now.
Okay. Okay, can everybody see that?
Yes.
Yep.
Yes.
All right, let me go into presentation mode. All right, so thank you for the opportunity to present to the Ashland Planning Board the wireless technology risks and safer municipal solutions. And my name is CeCe Doucette. I hold a master's in technical and professional writing from Northeastern University. I also helped Ashland become the first in the United States to post this little sign here on the right, best practices for mobile devices, back in 2014. And basically, we're trying to set precautionary measures into motion so that we're not exposing the students and the staff to radio frequency microwave radiation. And then I worked with Senator Karen Spilka and Representative Jack Lewis to introduce legislation to begin an investigation on the wireless radiation issue. And I helped to get a groundbreaking law passed in New Hampshire that we'll look at in a few moments. On this journey, I've had the privilege of connecting with many of the world's leading scientists and doctors who have dedicated their professional careers to understanding and treating people with microwave sicknesses. And I helped to found a nonprofit out of Europe called Wireless Education, where we've distilled this down into a format where people can take a quick training course for about a half an hour online. There's one for schools and families and one for the corporate sector as well. And I didn't know it when I fell down the rabbit hole with this back in 2012, 2013. But there were people all over the Commonwealth who are starting to figure out that the radio frequency, microwave radiation, electromagnetic fields were causing they and their loved ones to become ill. And so we have founded Massachusetts for Safe Technology. I also wanted to mention that I was honored to be asked to co-chair the technology panel for the Health and Buildings Roundtable Conference down at the National Institutes of Health, where we helped building planners, city planners, hospitals, architects, doctors and others to understand what the radio frequency radiation issues are. And I put this link in here because our presentations are very short. They're all under 10 minutes, but I had with me that day one of the world's leading scientists, Dr. Martin Paul, as well as Frank Clegg, who's the retired president of Microsoft Canada, and other experts in the field. So if you want to go in and listen to real experts, that would be a nice place to start for a quick update on what this issue is. And then we just held an International Electromagnetic Fields medical conference at the end of January, and I was honored to be asked to speak there on state and local policy. So everything in my presentation that is underlined is something that when I send you the slides after tonight's presentation, perhaps we can post online. Pete suggested it so that the whole community can go out and begin to do their own investigation on this issue. So the reason why Ashland Public Schools took measures back in 2014 to start putting precautionary steps in place, when they read the legal fine print, they realized that they had given the children devices and the faculty and the staff devices that were not being used in a way that complies with the legal fine print. So anybody with us tonight who happens to have an iPhone, I would invite you to take that out and go into settings. If you use a different type of device other than an iPhone, you can go out to a website called See the Fine Print and see what other devices have in their legal fine print as well. But if you are with us on an iPhone tonight, go into settings, scroll down just a little bit and hit general, and then go all the way down. Second to the last is about. Or I'm sorry, if it's an older phone, from general, you go to the top and hit about, but most have upgraded. So on a newer phone, you go from general all the way down to the bottom and you'll see legal and regulatory second from the bottom. When you click on that, at the top is a little list, and about 5 or 6 down, you'll see RF exposure, which is radio frequency radiation, or two-way microwave radiation in the electromagnetic spectrum. It's in the microwave section. And in that legal fine print, it tells us a couple of really important things. One, this device was tested at a distance, so we really ought not to be having it anywhere near or on our body when it's actively transmitting. And it also suggests to use a hands-free option, because without forthright telling us that one device now has 5 or 6 separate antennas, and if you've upgraded to 5G, more than that, to constantly make or maintain a handshake with the nearest cell tower or router. And the message tonight is certainly not no technology. We love our technology, we depend on it, but there are really safe ways to use technology without wireless radiation exposures, and we'll talk about that too. So what does the science tell us? This study here in the middle was done by the National Toxicology Program. It's a $30 million study, the largest study that's ever been done by the world's leading toxics researcher. They investigated whether cell phones could cause any harm for about 20 years. And then they had an unprecedented 3-day peer review down at the National Institutes of Health with world leading experts weighing in on this. At the end of this peer review, their final report concluded clear evidence of cancerous tumors and DNA damage. Clear evidence is the highest classification of toxicity they can give. And the industry is known to spin these things and say, oh, that's just one study. Well, right on the heels of the National Toxicology Program study, Italy's Ramazzini Institute came out with another very large study that corroborated everything we found here in the US. So child and adult cancers, DNA damage. It was actually the infertility studies that got me on my feet. I started reading the scientific literature, and they have taken male human sperm, exposed it to a laptop with the antennas turned on, and it changed the DNA, which is our roadmap to grow a proper little human. It slowed the motility, and it caused far fewer sperm to be viable in just 4 hours of exposure. So that was the day I decided I better raise this conversation with my children's schools, and that's where I engaged. Another big issue is that this radio frequency radiation is a neurotoxin. It pulses at millions or billions cycles a second, and that dysregulates our own body's biochemistry, our own body's electrical systems, and the science is linking it to ADD, ADHD. Dr. Hugh Taylor down at Yale Medical, he's done studies where the rodents that were exposed to this toxin came out with pups that looked very much like a child with ADD, ADHD. It's also linked in the scientific literature to autism and to Alzheimer's, and children are especially vulnerable to radio frequency. They're not just little people. And the science has now come further along. And when you look at this modeling here, if these had the graphics turned sideways, but that's a cell phone held up to the ear, and this is how far it penetrates into an adult brain, and then over here on a 10-year-old brain, and over here on a 5-year-old child, you can see this radiation is penetrating almost the entire brain. So a lot of us may recognize some of these short-term effects that people feel as their body starts to get overwhelmed being in electrosmog. So electrical sensitivities are already recognized by the Americans with Disabilities Act. They have resources out on their website to offer accommodations. Insomnia is a big one. When this radiation pulses all night long, our brain thinks the lights are on. This is a light energy form. Our brain thinks the lights are on and it doesn't properly release melatonin to go in and do the sleep cycle regulation or to help escort the toxins out through our bloodstream. Headaches, stabbing, searing headaches that doctors can't seem to figure out, nosebleeds and ear bleeds. This causes something called the rouleau effect, where our red blood cells start glomming together that look like a stack of blood cells instead of free floating and oxygenating all of our systems. Fatigue is a big one. Pain that they can't find the root cause for, skin abnormalities, rashes, flushing, heating, tingling, irregular heartbeats, too high or too slow. Cognitive impairment's a big one, especially among the elderly. And then the behavior issues. We see a lot of kids' behavior issues calm way down when the parents decide to use hardwired technology in the home instead of having a child either near the router or all of the Bluetooth that might be in the home. Just hardwire everything and you have perfectly safe technology once you turn off the antennas. The epidemic proportions that we have today for anxiety, depression, and suicidal ideation, it is clearly tied in the scientific literature to be a leading factor. This meta-study by Dr. Martin Paul is a really good one to read if anybody's interested in that. And then there's a whole host of other issues. Every biological cell is impacted by radio frequency radiation. And I won't go through the details here, but it's taken a heavy toll on our environment as well. And I wanted to mention the utility smart meters because I know Ashland is in the process of integrating more of those into our homes. So these right now, the way they're built, pulse microwave radiation continuously, hundreds or 1,000 times a day, on, off, on, off, on, off, on, off. And that is what dysregulates our own body's biochemistry. Another issue with the smart meters is that frequency can hop on the wires or the pipes of the home if it's not properly grounded, and that can turn the whole building into basically a giant RF antenna. There are also a lot of cases out there where these are not installed properly, fires and explosions, but a lot of people really care about their privacy. And what the industry is doing is harvesting data to capture your usage to then sell that data off to third-party vendors who then want to sell products to you. These utility smart meters are often the leading cause of sudden onset microwave sickness, especially when you have a multi-unit dwelling and they put a whole bank of these outside somebody's wall or underneath their floor in the laundry room. A lot of people get sick when that happens. There's a really good TED Talk by Jeremy Johnson. He's an engineer out in Silicon Valley. He and his wife both got really sick when a bank of these smart meters showed up on their condo. His wife is a doctor, he's an engineer. So Jeremy is now dedicating his life to helping others with this. Cell towers. It's really critical to look at the non-industry funded science. And when you peel back and read these studies, you'll find that they are finding cancers, neurological issues, sleep problems, and more within 500 meters of a cell tower. That's about 1,400 or 1,640 feet. And so it's critical to look at the non-industry funded science, because we know the industry does some science of their own that is conducted under conditions that would deliberately show no harm. So you can go to this link and look at the science. You can also go to a free website online called antennasearch.com. You can put in any address and it will show you where all the big cell towers and big antennas are within a 2-mile radius. When I put in the State House address, they could only return a 1-mile radius because the industry has put so many cell towers in downtown Boston. There were 1,184 antennas within a 1-mile radius of that State House. This map on the right, I put in the 20 Ponderosa Road. That gives you an idea of how the industry is really densifying these cell towers in our communities. So what is 5G? 5G simply means 5th generation technology, but it's very different from the previous generations. The industry is promising faster entertainment downloads, smart cities, etc. And 3G is starting to go away, but 4G is staying. That will be the backbone for 5G. So 5G is the addition of new radiation that's coming from smaller waves. They pretty much maxed out the profitability on the bigger, longer waves that are used for 3G and 4G. All that's left are these crummy little millimeter waves that they're spinning up will be, really fast downloads, a lot of entertainment. And look to see who's buying up the entertainment companies. It's the telecom companies too. But these little millimeter waves can't go very far. So they have to put them, they're proposing every 2 to 12 houses in every single neighborhood at the curb outside our bedrooms. They're also clear cutting a lot of trees because trees and rains and objects will interfere with the transmission. So that's why they're trying to bring us as close to the people as they can. And the industry's goal, again, is already to put them every 2 to 12 houses. And if you look at this little map down here, these are all small cell antennas installed all over Boston already. And what we just did in Ponderosa Drive or Ponderosa Road was give the industry permission to start putting those in a neighborhood in Ashland. And the industry typically is able to earn the greatest revenue in highly densified areas like our big cities. They still have to deliver to give high speed, high quality internet access out in the suburbs. And now what they're saying they want to do is hang these satellites from the sky and beam down radio frequency to connect with the device on the ground. So if we don't get ahead of this and start using our voice with our policymakers, we are literally going to have no place to go where we're not getting radiated. And those licenses are already being granted by the FCC. The kicker, though, is if you look at this link, it's Congressman Richard Blumenthal out of Connecticut at a federal hearing for commerce. And he point blank asked the industry, so please tell us how much research have you funded to make sure this is safe before it came to market? And both of these captains of industry said, actually, we don't know of any science that's been done. So looking here at Ponderosa Road, I took this acoustimeter out and measured, and you can see it's going into the red zone. I was standing right there next to the animal control building. So those poor animals that are being housed there are under this cell tower in a very dangerous situation. Over here, we've got this, you can see the cell tower up in here, and right here is this building. And then we have our sign for the river walk, which is supposed to be a wonderful way to get out in nature and connect with the Earth's natural energies. And here we've got a cell tower right there on this beautiful new pathway that we've carved out for the community to use in a very highly toxic environment. So I think if I understand correctly what that latest application was, I suspect when they say they're taking down antennas and just putting up some new ones, I suspect they're retiring 3G, which forces people to have to discard their current technology and upgrade to something more. And they are, as the lawyer indicated from the industry, they are installing 5G small cell antennas and the advanced 4G antennas right in our backyards. So what I wanted to do was kind of bring this home. The science, as I mentioned, indicates that there are high levels of risk within 500 meters or 1,600 feet of a cell tower. So I went out to a map and plotted where this would be. It would impact directly Sudbury Road residents, Birch Hill Lane, Bresnick Road, Corderville Road, Ponderosa Road, Pleasant Street, Winter Street, and Forest Avenue, as well as Metcalf Avenue. And there's about 135, give or take, businesses and homes within that radius where the science shows great harm. Another risk that our community faces is property value degradation. And in the real estate literature, they show that within 720 meters or about 2,300 feet from a cell tower, property values tend to drop by about 10%. I've also seen other studies that showed 20%, but to be conservative, I've looked at that. So when we look at that purple circle there, it adds in about another 160 homes and properties that are impacted on all of these roads as well. So what does that translate into? If we're looking at about 300 properties within this range of where it shows property values tend to drop, let's just say our average property values are about 400,000.
CeCe?
Yeah.
Can you just go back over the basis for the property value
Sure.
degradation? Sorry.
Yeah, so that is a study that was done by one of the real estate associations, and you can click into that link and it'll take you right to the study. But this is very serious because for people who are tuning into radio frequency, they'll go out and see where the cell towers are. And if they're anywhere near where they plan to live or build a home or lease, they're going to keep moving on. So it does have a direct impact. So if you lose 10% on a $400,000 home, that's a $40,000 loss in value, which then goes into our potential loss in Ashland's taxable assets. That could be a great number there. If we're looking at 300 properties times 40,000, that's $12 million in revenue that we could stand to lose. So I know that cell tower's up. We probably can't do anything about it, but we just need to learn together and figure out how we can strengthen our own bylaws to make it difficult for the industry to come in and just put a cell tower in a residential area. So when I was figuring all this out, I'm like, if this is as bad as I'm hearing it is, how come we don't know? And then in 2015, Harvard's Law School Center for Ethics came out with this good report called Captured Agency, how the FCC is dominated by the industries it presumably regulates. And in that document, they liken the big Wi-Fi tactics to the big tobacco tactics. Suppress evidence of harm, come up with your own studies that show no harm, control the media, and continue, do your lobbying up at Capitol Hill and get laws passed that favor your corporate profits over public health. And then you can continue to promote your wonderful products to the public and they will have no idea. So when that $30 million study was done, it was commissioned by the Food and Drug Administration 20 years ago. And there are now other people heading up the radiation area of the FDA. And Dr. Jeffrey Shuren, when that study came out and the final report came out, he turned around to the FCC and said, oh, no need to worry, keep doing what you're doing. No need to change those exposure limits. And one might ask, what would ever possess him to do that? Well, it turns out Dr. Shuren has a huge conflict of interest. He is married to a woman who's a partner in a law firm that represents the wireless industry to the tune of billions of dollars. So he should have been nowhere near that study. And just a word of caution, I was brought in over at Dover Sherborne High and we met with the wellness committee there. And as we were meeting on a conference table with a dozen people, one of the gentlemen had his iPad with him and he pulled up this article from the New York Times that basically said there's nothing wrong with 5G, it's just the Russians fear mongering. But what they didn't know is that there's a huge conflict of interest at the New York Times as well. There's a 5G Verizon lab at the New York Times. They have industry on their board. And in Ireland, the ombudsman called out the New York Times for violating the Truth and Accuracy Code when that article was published. I reached out to Bill Broad, who's the journalist. He's actually a 2-time Pulitzer Prize winning journalist. And I handed him the facts, and still they continue to promote false information. Even at the World Health Organization, one would never know that there's 2 groups addressing electromagnetic fields there. One is heavily industry sponsored. The other is actual non-industry funded scientists. And you just need to know where to look, because otherwise you do a cursory search. The first thing that pops up is the WHO says there's no conclusive evidence. Well, their website is way out of date. And in fact, in 2020, they began to reopen their investigation because in 2011, they already classified this as a group 2B possible human carcinogen. And now we have the animal studies to prove that it is a human carcinogen. So Martin Luther King Jr. taught us that whenever we make important changes in society, it comes through 3 different channels. One, the public engages, which is what we're doing now. Courts eventually rule and hold the guilty accountable. And then public policy catches up and is enacted to protect the public. So there are public servants taking action all over. Eastern Connecticut has banned 5G. Hawaii County got a resolution to ban 5G. Bermuda has a temporary moratorium. And this is happening all over the world. But again, we don't hear it through mainstream media because it's owned by the parent companies of the telecom companies. There's a lot happening throughout the state. Shelburne has already gotten a 1,500-foot setback in their bylaws in residential areas and 3,000 feet from schools. I won't go into all of this, but just know we're not alone having this conversation. This is happening all over the state. And we became the first in the United States to put one of these radiation detection meters on loan in the Ashland Public Library. So anybody can take this out and take it home. You know, mine shows green because I've already made the transition to safe technology, but most homes will be way off in the red zone. So you can borrow that for a week at a time and go home and see what your exposures are, and then start thinking about ways, if you're interested, to reduce your exposures. A doctor and I went after a cultural council grant and got one put on loan in Newton that anybody in the state can take out. Ours in Ashland came out of our Marathon Grant Fund, so it's just for Ashland residents. So the city of Boston has already filed a public comment with the FCC saying we believe the public. There's no evidence that any of this is safe, and the science shows it's very harmful. The city of Boston actually joined with others and sued the FCC for taking away local control. Burlington's small cell policy got Verizon to withdraw their applications, and that policy has become a national example with 5gcrisis.com. And then there are other cities and towns in Massachusetts that are adopting the Burlington small cell, so that would be something for Ashland to consider. We presented to the Shrewsbury Board of Health. We brought in a panel of world-leading experts in Concord. Worcester has something up on their school website with some precautionary measures for radio frequency. And then in the legal arena, the FCC is being sued. I mentioned the city of Boston, and then the FCC had an open docket where hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of testimonies were sent in by world-leading experts and people who have become ill from this. And that was where the FCC ignored the science, looked to the FDA and said, oh, it's fine. Okay, it's fine. Well, once that hit the Federal Register, then the lawsuits could begin. And so right now there's a big lawsuit with the Environmental Health Trust and Bobby Kennedy Jr.'s Children's Health Defense. And they had oral arguments at the end of January, and the judges were not impressed because the FCC had no evidence that any due diligence was done by the FDA or the FCC. So we're awaiting their ruling on that. There's already been a big lawsuit that was won. Apparently, we were all charged on our phone bills to bring safe, hardwired fiber optic technology to the premises. And instead, the industry took that money, put it in their wireless bucket, put the hard wiring down the middle of the road, but didn't bring it to the premises. They started throwing up all these wireless small cell antennas, which are very harmful. Through this lawsuit with the regulators, they have cleared the way for our states to go back and recoup that funding so that we can bring safe hardwired technology to the premises. You guys may know there was a federal lawsuit over at the Fay School in Southborough where children were becoming sick from the wireless radiation. And the first time in US courts, they recognize that you don't have to have heat from a device to have harm. And that's what the industry's been telling us, you have to have heat, but you don't. The science has proven that there are non-thermal biological effects. There are also town level lawsuits going on where town boards did not adhere to their ordinances and permits were given for cell towers. And so there's a lot going on in that area too. Lawsuit against Apple because they have toxic technology. So one of the bright lights in this is we were able to get a law passed in New Hampshire in just 7 months' time, and their commission had to answer these questions. Why does the insurance industry, Lloyd's of London, et cetera, already recognize this as a leading risk and put exclusions in their policies, which can leave our towns very vulnerable for liability? Why does the legal fine print to say it away from the body? Why is the FCC ignoring the science? Why don't they account for these non-thermal biological effects? Why do they radiate us with 100 times more radiation than some other countries are doing? And why is nobody paying attention to the cumulative effect of this toxin? As with any toxin, the more exposure you have, the worse the risk is. So on November 1st, they issued their groundbreaking report. They call out the conflicts of industry, conflicts of interest with industry and the FCC. And they have 15 recommendations that Ashland can start looking at to see how we can begin to transition to safe technology. Last session, we led the nation with 20 bills. This session, we have Senator Michael Moore is bringing back his bill to give everybody in Massachusetts the right to choose to have public utility meters that don't transmit toxic microwave radiation. And Senator Julian Cyr is preparing a bill to file that would either emulate the New Hampshire law or integrate that into what he filed the last couple of sessions to give people the right to know. And their deadline this year has been moved to February 19th because of COVID. There are all sorts of tools out there. Like I mentioned, the medical conference, there are papers to teach architects and others how to incorporate safe technology into the built environment. The IEEE has papers that we could all learn from. And then there's a lot of really easy ways to learn. That we have our courses. There's an award-winning film that we showed at the Ashland Public Library. Bert Wolf on PBS has even done a couple episodes, and 5gcrisis.com has a whole toolkit with things that we can all use to learn and to bring this to a higher level of conversation. And then there are professionals that can be hired to come into your home or office to help you remediate. And again, the message is not no technology, but we've got to set limits for our children, and our kids see what we're doing. So we need to make sure we're modeling good behavior. Remember to get back outside and do all the other things that used to fill our lives with joy instead of being in front of a screen all the time. And earthing or grounding brings the electrons from the earth back up into our bodies to help us regulate. So good resources there. But you know, it's not rocket science. Turn everything off when you're not using it, or put it in airplane mode and only turn on the antennas that you need. We need to be mindful of secondhand radiation, just like we did with secondhand smoke for children and our pets. And then, you know, all you have to do is go to the back of your router. You'll see ports in there. You just hook up a shielded Ethernet cable. Look for shielded ones so that the electric and magnetic fields don't bleed out into your living space, because that's harmful too. And if you have more than one device, just get a little switch box and adapters. And this is what it looks like. You know, we've done this in our house. My kids came home for the pandemic and we just set up workstations around the house. And the kicker is, once you hardwire and turn off the antennas, you get a screaming fast signal. It's much more reliable. Your data is safe. It's more secure. And it's far more sustainable to lay fiber optics down the road and to the building than anything wireless is ever going to bring to us. And the science shows that all of this wireless infrastructure consumes 10 times more energy than the safe hardwired technology solutions. So we've got a long ways to go, but we're at a good starting point because there is so much happening. So at a municipal level, investigate. Don't take my word on any of this. Go out and do your due diligence. You're welcome to use the links in here as a launch point. And I've put up a page on my research repository, which is called Understanding EMFs. And I built a page for municipal leaders to try and see it from your vantage point. What have you heard from the industry? What do the facts support? And what are solutions that we could work towards safe technology? And it's critical to differentiate the industry's priorities from the public's. The industry is selling us on 5G and the Internet of Things. I don't think any of us ever woke up one day and said, gee, I need my baby's diaper to talk to my cell phone, or gee, I need my kid's potty chair to talk to my cell phone, or I need my refrigerator to talk to my cell phone. So, you know, they're pushing this. Somehow we went from being consumers to being consumed, but we need to understand the facts and then step back and see what we want to do. This book over here on the right is free and online. It's with Dr. Timothy Sheckley, who is a telecom expert. And he has created a way for us to see at least a dozen ways why wireless is a really bad investment for our communities and what we need to do to build out the infrastructure for safe landlines and networks. And then
CeCe, really quick, are you nearing the end? Because we're way past the 20 minutes.
Okay, I'm just about done. So it's always really important to measure, because until you do, you honestly don't know what your exposures are. And be sure to measure against biological effects, which you can see with the Building Biology Institute, not the FCC limits, because they don't protect us. We're fortunate that the Centers for Disease Control already has a measure called ALARA, as low as reasonably achievable. That's the yardstick they use for ionizing radiation. For this non-ionizing radiation, we just need to catch up and set our minds to going to as low as reasonably achievable. So what Burlington, Massachusetts did is they set up a townwide safety committee for technology, and that's when they came up with their small cell policy. We should really commit to doing a no-fee opt-out for all this smart metering technology we're rolling out, because I, for one, don't want this on my home. In Concord last night, they just approved an opt-out for their citizens. So others are doing this, and we can connect you with those. We should begin to think about transitioning to hardwired technology in our public spaces, our schools, our libraries, our town hall, our rec centers, and our fields. We should be protecting the kids who are playing out there. And then take a look at our bylaws. As I said, 5gcrisis.com has a toolkit. They've got an ordinance in there, which is a pretty good sample where they've culled best practices across the nation. They have a checklist here of what to look for in our bylaws. And Andrew Campanelli used to be a telecom lawyer until he figured out what the telecom industry was doing. Now he represents municipalities and individuals. He would be a good person to engage. And then I reached out to Burlington and asked who was the special counsel they brought in for their small cell policy. Her name is Donna Brewer. She is a municipal attorney for 8 towns in Massachusetts. And she said a lot of towns are adopting that Burlington small cell. So Donna would be happy to help you as well. And then contact our legislators, because until these laws change, we realize that you guys oftentimes feel hamstrung because of what the industry has told you, but they don't always tell you the full facts. So question everything and work with experts who can help you to navigate. And then let's educate the community. Let's see if we can train the schools and our community staff on safe technology as soon as possible. The Mediterranean country of Cyprus has already put out this fact sheet here for how to keep our families safe, especially during COVID with distance learning. So we don't have to reinvent the wheel. Others are already laying the pathway for us, but we need to do our research and make a commitment to safe technology. We could sponsor public or even regional forums like we did out in the Berkshires with Tri-Town Health recently. And we could engage our professional associations. I was invited to set up a table to have a booth at the MASPO, the Massachusetts Society of the Building Officers. And they really appreciated learning about this. So if you want to bring me in to speak to your professional organizations, I would be honored to help get the word out. So thank you. Folks can find more information at Massachusetts for Safe Technology. You can email me at massforsafetech@gmail.com or this little nonprofit we have, wirelesseducation.org. So thank you so much for allowing me to share that information. And if I can answer any questions, I'd be honored.
Does anybody have any questions? Okay, but they can get the information at your website. They can contact you if they have anything.
Yeah.
Okay, Mark has a quick question. Mark?
Good evening, Mark Sony. Great presentation, CeCe, as always.
Thanks, Mark.
Is still some of the information I gave you in that?
No, the information you were kind enough to provide to me was for one of the previous meetings when they were looking at a specific application for the Ponderosa Road. And you had also pulled up the town's bylaws, which I hope the town will revisit and see if we can strengthen those to make it more challenging for the industry to just roll in and put up toxic cell tower infrastructure.
So in the past times, I was glad to help and assist you. And to the chairman, thank you for giving the extra time to finish up. It was educational and it was worthwhile hearing again. And the 5G it's not 5 great to me, but it's got to be, have to be told. It's got to be the public and it's got to be learned by everybody in the know. Thank you.
All right, thanks, Mark. Well, thank you, CeCe. Oh, Joe.
Yeah, I just want to say thank you, CeCe. It's an impressive presentation in the amount of energy and work that's gone into putting that together, and it's actually kind of drinking from the fire hose in terms of the amount of resources and pieces that are already out there that you kind of cull together. So I mean, I think it personally, I obviously I need to get that presentation and I'd like to read a little bit more and get a little bit more information myself. It's a really tough one. I mean, as I see it, because from a very high level, there's a lot of major economic things that are very connected to this technology. I mean, there's so many things. I mean, one of the biggest ones that I can see that we know is just hanging out there in the future is self-driving car technology, and those cars are going to be.
You have to have wireless for self-driving cars. There's Dr. Paul Haru teaches electromagnetism up at McGill University, and there are other engineering technologies that can be used that don't require radio frequencies. So our engineers can figure this out. They just haven't been asked to. They've been going through hanging fruit with the industry. And, as I said, it's cumulative. So the sooner that we really take a good hard look at this, the better for our community it will be.
Yeah, that's interesting. So I thank you for the information. I thank you for the energy and the time you've put into this. Thank you for this presentation. And, I think this could be the beginning of a dialogue with the town and how, what townspeople think about this topic and how they see this and come at it. So thank you.
Okay, well, thank you very much. Looks like that's it. And thank you, CeCe. And
all right. Thanks so much, Mr. Buchanan. I appreciate your time. And I'm here. Feel free to reach out even with silly little questions. I'd be happy to help.
okay.
Thank you, CeCe.
All right, so Pete's joining us.
Yeah, and thank you so much, CeCe.
And
Dale and the other members of the planning board, I know CeCe was going to email me her presentation after tonight, and we will, once I receive that, we'll forward it out to the planning board members, and we can always put that up on our website for interested residents that are interested in 5G technology, but also just wireless technology as a whole.
good. So do we have a downtown zoning presentation follow-up?
We do not have after last meeting. I know the board. Really, it's a conversation. I would say, as our conversation had kind of expanded at the last meeting, we talked about setting up a meeting to actually walk through the downtown. And I know Emma put together a doodle poll and sent it out to all the planning board members. However, I think we sent out about 6 dates, and the maximum amount of people or board members that replied that they could make each date or each time slot was 2. And so I'm going to let Emma kind of talk about the dates and what worked for people. But I think tonight it's just a matter of nailing down a day and a time that would work for everybody, so we could kind of schedule that meeting. I'm also happy if we cannot all meet together as a group of 5. I'm also happy to, maybe shift and do, maybe 2 meetings with 2 groups of the planning board, just so we can kind of move this process along. But Emma, do you want to go over the dates that we proposed with the planning board?
Yeah, so it looks like the most availability exists on February 17th, which is next Wednesday. There are basically 3 members who could do a 9 o'clock tour and 2 that could do 11 with 1 overlap. So maybe, Peter, if you want to move forward with your 2 meeting plan, we can just post both times and have 2 small groups.
Well, I was looking at the weather too, and it looks like 6 to 8 inches of snow on Tuesday.
Oh, perfect.
Oh,
So I don't know if that's going to affect the Wednesday walk around.
Yeah.
So my opinion on this one, like, I think there's value in for all of us being together as opposed to doing these 2 separate meetings. So, I mean, I hadn't thought about the weather, but that's an excellent point as well. So to me, I'd say my opinion, we should push out to the following week and find a time when everybody can make it, or, all -1 type of a thing. I think that's the most productive for us from a conversation perspective. Okay.
I could resend the doodle poll for the following, not next week, but the following week. In this past one, we did suggest 9 o'clock, 11 o'clock, and 2 o'clock time slots. And I am wondering if there is a daytime time that would work better for anyone. We kind of just picked those thinking, the sun's out and it'll be a little more pleasant than, in the evening. But if there's any particular time generally that works best for people in the daytime, I can certainly add that in as an option.
yeah.
And I'm good as long as I know ahead of time. I'm good at any time, pretty much. So
I'm the same. I don't know. Basically any of those times would work, but I could also have something scheduled at any of those times if it's not far enough in advance.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, do people have their calendars here? Can we just try to crush this right now?
Yeah,
If
we
people
could.
have their calendars
Good.
open,
Yeah,
let's get it done.
Joe, the
And-
following week doesn't look great either. There's snow showers every day from Monday 22nd on.
Oh, that's a 2-week forecast, Lakshmi. There's no way that could be right. It's
can the
absolutely
planning board-
impossible.
Can we rent an Arctic cat and just drive around?
That's a good.
Good idea. I mean, like, can I just throw this on the table? And, Emma, please feel free to shoot this down and say, hey, I don't live in Ashland, and so this doesn't work. But, like, I could also do something on the earlier side and do like an 8. I don't know how other people's commitments are in the mornings, but I'd throw that out too.
Yeah, from 8 to 10, anytime from 8 to 10 works for me any weekday.
I'd have to get up early, but that's fine. with me.
What about Deepa?
I go into Boston Monday, Tuesdays. So Wednesday, Thursday, Fridays, Wednesday is the best day of all the days in a week.
24th, Wednesday, February 24th.
That's good.
That will be perfect for me.
Yes.
That works well for me.
Weather,
Tricia?
I'm completely open.
unless the weather comes, some severe storm or something.
Yeah.
Lakshmi will bring a shovel. We'll be fine.
Everybody
so
good
what-
with that?
I have a battery operated snowblower now, so I can bring that.
I got a big snow blower. I'll just bring it downtown and we can, trundle along behind it.
We'll just walk behind it. Yeah.
So
6 feet
Everybody's
apart.
good, everybody's good with that?
So obviously, Peter, you're coming from afar, presuming you're gonna be there. Emma, I'm not sure how far you're coming from. What can work? Do we do 8? Do we do 9? What are the thoughts?
I can, just to jump in here, obviously I can get usually 8:45 would work for me at the earliest. So 8:45 or 9, just come. I'm not worried about snow, to tell you the truth. But yeah, I would say 8:45 it would be the best time for me.
So you want to do 8:45 to 10 on
Yeah.
Wednesday, February 24th?
Yeah, 8:30 I'll be coming out. I'll be on 2 wheels coming out to Ashland. So
Right.
I think 8:45 works best.
Now listen, here's the really important piece of this. Who's gonna get bagels at the bagel table so we can walk around for breakfast?
I think we start at the bagel table. Joe.
Yeah, actually, it's actually a really
That's
good
a
idea. We get a coffee in our hands and then we can
And walk around, yeah.
go.
I
We
think
can meet at the bagel table.
I think we should all park at the corner spot, walk over to the bagel table, and then kind of start walking around from there.
Great.
And if
So
we make brunch at Sunnyside, we make brunch at Sunnyside.
really support some local business. Awesome.
Yeah, from commerce.
All right, so 8:45 to 10 on the 24th,
Mm-hmm.
starting at the bagel table.
All right. Well,
Mhm.
Emma will remind us, right? Send out a.
We'll send out a calendar invite. Yep.
And I'll post the agenda and send that out. So it'll be a meeting.
Okay.
And I mean,
Done. Good job, Joe.
thank you. And thank you for everybody for being willing to do that. And the only other thing is, again, we're obviously going to post it. It's a public meeting. It would be good to, publicize isn't probably the right word, but put it on our website or just generally beyond just posting it. It would be cool to, make sure that public's aware and that they're welcome to kind of like tag along and, participate and hear the conversation, which is
Yeah.
why we're trying to do it and how
We
we're
could
doing
loop
it.
in Ashley, the communications coordinator, and see if we can get a social media post between now and then.
Okay.
Yeah. I think we can create a little flyer or something and put it up with Ashley and put it up and do something of that nature, Joe.
Do you guys oppose? Does anybody have issue with that or think that that's an unwise decision, unproductive thing?
No, that seems like a good idea.
I think it's a good idea. I don't think it'll happen, but I'm wondering if the group gets too big and we can't be right next to each other, it might be hard to discuss anything if we do want to discuss something, but yeah, I think we should put it out there. I kind of doubt that we'll get 30 takers,
Yeah.
So.
Especially at 9
and we
o'clock
would-
on Wednesday morning.
And we would say also, obviously, in that communication, we would say, wearing masks and observing some distancing, right? Just to be consistent
Yeah.
with the rules.
Yeah.
That's a good call, Tricia, but let's see what happens.
Yeah.
Let's see if we can get 5 of us to show up.
Good call.
Okay. So now.
Can I
Alright.
speak up on this?
Sure, Mark.
Thank you.
Real quick, Mark.
Okay. I thank you for the interest in getting out there from the bagel table and making a economic hike around, hopefully. And through the chairman, I already talked to Amber the other night. Peter,
Yes, Mark.
did you get my response to your email about my concerns?
I believe you stated that you stated your concerns at the meeting.
Yeah, and did you get my reply back?
I did, but for, I did see it, but for some reason, I'm not recalling. I did see the email. Yes, Mark.
Yeah, because you say you're gonna, at the time, bring it up in front of the select board, but the company that was supposed to come in for it did not come in that night. So that got tabled.
Okay, I'll have to go back and look at look at the email chain, Mark.
Okay, and to keep going, keep it understanding, downtown zoning, it's only be good for a good future for Ashland if you get into it and not just walk around and just have a social hour out of it. It's gotta be a meeting, and it's gotta be a meaningful understanding between all of you to have the zone and have the board, and hoping for the future of the town to go ahead with yourselves. Thank you.
Okay.
I mean, I think that's what we're trying to do, Mark. We're speaking in light terms of it, but it's intended to be a working session to look at things and talk about zoning, and it's intended to be an hour of real work and discussion. So, yeah, we're just trying to be lighthearted, but we're trying to do the good work here, I think. So.
I guess if worse comes to worse, we can send a drone out, just zoom in with the drone footage. All right. So the next one is discussion of possible zoning bylaw amendments, including covered porch bylaw.
Yes.
I wonder where that came
it's
from.
Some guy. No.
For the last 3 years has been hounding.
Yeah, the Dale show, right?
Yeah.
But no,
Can you
this
give
is
us the primer on this, guys? Dale and Peter or Emma?
Dale,
Well,
do you want to set the
basically-
table?
Basically what it is people, a lot of the houses are built right up to the easement, right up to the setback where they, at the front of the house. And if they wanted to add a porch, they'd have to go through, special permit or variance. And this just allows a porch to be built on the front of your house with a regular permit. And correct me if I'm wrong, Pete, if I'm going down the wrong, but with certain restrictions where you can't just build a big giant porch right up to the street. It's limited on the size, and a lot of other towns have done this, and it's to more community have a porch on the front, and rather than a bunch of square boxy houses, I think it will look better, but more of a community thing where people can come out and sit on their front porches and without having to go through the whole thing of getting zoning variance or any of that.
Yeah, so just to jump in, Dale's correct. Dale, hit the nail on the head on this one. And I'm just going to take a residential A zoning district, which is most of the town, just for a quick example. But when you start looking at the setbacks and the front yard setback and the rear yard setback and side yards, you therefore create a building envelope concerning where your house is plopped down and or where your house is built, right? Other aspects that, in the town that kind of determine the location of your house from a footprint standpoint would be your septic system, either in the front or the back. However, septic system. Just with this, in the residential A district, there's a front yard setback of 40 feet, right? And so therefore, there has to be 40 feet between your property line and the edge of your structure, which is your home. Obviously, over the decades, I would say people have decided to max out the size of the square footage of their house and move their house, closer to their property line as possible, which would be 40 feet. So if you did, Dale, as Dale was saying, if you did want to develop a farmer's porch or open air porch off the front of your house, you would have to go to the zoning board of appeals and request a variance, right? And try to meet all 4 points and or hurdles of a variance, which kind of, not to get too far in the weeds, which can be hard to do, right? And you have to have the zoning board would have to kind of buy into that argument. So without setting up those hurdles or breaking, I would say in this case, we are breaking down those hurdles for residents that want to develop a open air porch off the front of their house and or side of their house, which would respect the setbacks, but it would eliminate that process going to the zoning board of appeals in that case. And so I think it's a really good idea. You know, I remember I have in the past issued variances for front porches, you know, through when I spent time down in Hanover. And, you know, it's a 3-4 month process to do that. And so to be able to kind of unlock this or break down this hurdle, I think is a good thing. So Emma and I, and obviously, you know, put together this front porch bylaw, and we found the place where it fit in within section 4. And it just pretty much states that a application of this nature would have to, you know, request a building permit instead of going through a zoning variance case. And obviously we would be regulating it, you know, it could be enclosed by screen glass, you know, it's an open air porch, right? So it would not be enclosed.
Have screen or glass or
Correct.
You can't close it in. It's
It has
open.
screen, glass, buildable walls, you know, obviously it would have railings, it would have to meet building code, but it would be open air. And that's within, you know, obviously the purpose up here. Number 2, it gets into the height of how high these can be, obviously. The third one down, third point down, it kind of works on how far out this, you know, porch could come within to that setback. And then also point number 4, it just kind of states that the construction is in compliance with all other, you know, requirements under the zoning bylaws, without limitations to the side setbacks and lot coverage requirements. And so if you wanted to wrap your open air porch around, let's say the left and the right side of your house, you could do that, I would say. So
Peter, can I just share the draft document that you provided to us?
Oh, please do.
Illustrate this, because I think it's very helpful.
It's pretty straightforward and simple, but
it's fairly straightforward and simple.
I actually have a
it
few
just gets-
comments on it.
Sure.
well, we have to have a public hearing, right, and all that stuff before we.
That's the next process, but I think we should talk about it and have a conversation. So Trish, if you have comments,
It's more about things that I think are maybe missing from it
Okay.
that should be considered. And only if you're done with how you were presenting it.
no,
I just had-
I'm all set.
Okay. First of all, when it says enclosed by screen glass or building walls, there might also want to be something in there about the nature and height of the handrail. So if you they might not have a handrail at all, which is perfect. But if you have a handrail, you might want to be careful, you know, do you consider a 5-foot wall open air, right? So it might have a handrail limited to code. Maybe that handrail has to, if they use a handrail or guardrail, maybe it has to be open, not solid. So these front porches can't just be a place for storage. So how do you keep it open? Which I think it's almost there, but I think there's still ways to have it not be what you intended.
And on section 4, it says it has to be constructed in compliance with all other requirements of the underlying code. So it has to meet like with whatever deck requirements, correct?
Yeah, but I think, you know, I don't think there's, I think for any deck, there's no regulations on how high you can have a wall of a deck or how solid you can have the handrail. That wouldn't be a part of a normal building code that I'm familiar with.
Yeah, so you wouldn't have like a knee wall, right? Or a handrail is 48 inches tall, right?
Yeah, I mean, and you have to
be
imagine that you could have a solid half wall of undetermined height that really could be used. It would really defeat the intent, I think, that the thing that you're picturing, which I think is great. So I want to make sure everything stays within the spirit of what you're trying to do.
Well, open rail, it needs to be open railing.
Yeah, it can I mean, basically if porches are, well, you know this, like if they're 30 inches or below, they don't have to have any handrail at all. But if they're higher, then they need some kind of a rail, but you could stipulate an open rail.
Yeah, exactly.
The second thing is about the height thing here. It's a little, you know, when you talk about height, really that, and that's in point number 2, really that's all about the actual depth of the porch. Nothing in here that I see talks about the height of the porch. So we might have something on there that these porches are limited to no higher than 1 story. I'm not sure how to put that so that we get the effect that we're looking for, that you can't have, say, a balcony or a deck on top of the open covered porch, right? And that you can't have interior space up there. Like, does the creation of a porch mean that you can also extend your bedroom upstairs out that same 8 feet or whatever you have and make a, I know that's not the intention, but we're making sure that they can't do that.
Maybe something in there like a single story, just call it a single story porch. Somehow in the language where you can, when we're describing the front porch, it's a single story porch qualifies for this without a variance. You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
it's specifically to a 1 story porch with an open railing, if there's a railing. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think who's ever typing,
I am.
okay, I think that I think that this is another bullet point, because point number 2 is about the depth. So it's about the distance from the face of the house to the street. And this would be about the height. So it would really be a different point.
So I believe we could.
Sorry.
No, please, Deepa.
Would the depth of the kind of the porch be determined of what the setbacks are? And I don't know, I know Tricia is probably covering it with the height constraints, because you don't want shadow issues with your neighbors as well, because you're bringing, your neighbor may not come in that 10 feet and then you are going 10 feet and probably cutting off that light if it's a 1 story. So I wonder if that 10 feet has a minimum setback on 2 sides that kind of gets covered as well, so that the neighbors don't have shadow issues as well. Because if you are away from your neighbor, say 20 feet, then it doesn't matter. You're going 10, it's not going to affect them. But if you're not, you have 40 feet in front of you, but at the 2 sides you're close, and your neighbor may lose that light if they are not like a 2-story family house versus a single story, maybe.
But we also have to think, if there's a pre-existing non-conforming house in the downtown area that wants to do, manipulate, use a bylaw to put a porch on their house, maybe their setback is 12 feet, right? And they want to put a 6 feet porch on, that they're jumping into that setback, which is already pre-existing non-conforming 6 feet, right? And so do we want to limit it to no greater than 1/3?
Well, it is limited in
It is.
4, which is a bit of funny math, which I think is hard to envision without a specific example. But it's 60% of the applicable front yard. And then also it requires, in connection to Deepa's point, it does require that, or it disallows a house that is non-conforming with side setbacks to take advantage of this, because point 5 says they must be in conformance with the side setbacks. So if a house was already encroaching on their side setback, they would not be able to take advantage of this bylaw. So which doesn't mean that houses can't be close to each other, because side setbacks could be as small as 10 feet. But if you're 2 feet off your lot line, you're not going to be able to do this.
Or at least you would have to go through a special permit process or something.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
that would be a variance.
So this is trying to allow you to do this without going through a special permit process with regard to the front setback. It is not seeking to allow you to do this without a special permit with regard to side setback.
Yeah, that's in point
Yeah, that
5.
was the intent originally, was just the front porch. So if you wanted to go on the side, you'd still have to go through the.
What's it? Construction in compliance with, okay, right. So construction needs to be in compliance with all other requirements of underlying zoning, including without limitation, side yard setback, and lot coverage requirements. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, and so the language is already there, so
Yeah.
this chicken scratch can go bye-bye. Okay. Okay.
Yeah, so
Because it doesn't, I mean, if their house is too close, you can only go a certain percentage, so you're not gonna put a 3-foot, 2-foot porch on the front of your house.
right.
So it'll only work, you know, you have to figure that out if you're in that situation, but some of these, like our neighborhood that has 30 or something feet of front yard, and they want to put a 5-foot porch on the front. Situations like that would make sense.
So let's do some math. Let's do some math and just work these numbers, work a couple of these points a little bit, just for 2 minutes, if you bear with me. So let's say you have a house that has a 40-foot front setback and is otherwise in compliance with others, all other underlying zoning.
Mhm.
And so the
Joe, Joe, to add to that is, in case your neighbor has taken a special permit to override the setback and has come closer. So it's a 2 scenario, right? You may be right, you're 40 feet back, and then your setbacks for where you want to have the porch and things are right, but your neighbor is not having the same rule.
all I wanted to do was work the math on some of these formulas. Like I'm not sure my brain can handle the complexity of at the same
The
time.
neighbor.
So can we just do the basic first, Eva, and then we
Yeah.
can?
Yes,
Yeah.
sorry, I was jumping ship.
No,
Sorry.
it's fine. No, it's fine. I'm just trying to wrap my head. So, okay. So you've got a house, and it has a 30-foot setback in the front of the house. And let's say it's a 2-story home.
let's say it's 24 feet high.
Yep, perfect. 24 feet high. Yep. Okay. So what this would say is that,
Maximum 8 feet.
well, actually, 1 second. So the actual setback is 30 feet. And the required setback is 30 feet. So, right. So it's already, it has exactly the setback it needs. And so the thing is, it would not be allowed to chew up some of that setback for a farmer's porch without a special permit, unless this bylaw is amended and changed, right? And so this bylaw comes into effect and says, okay, well, what this would say to do the math, and let me zoom out and scroll down here a little bit. Okay, so number 2. So
Depth needs to be 10 feet
this would allow you to do a deck, a porch,
of 10 feet.
10 feet, or 1/3 of the height to which it is attached, whichever is less. 1/3 of 24 is 8 feet,
Sweet.
which is lesser than 10 feet. So this would allow a 8-foot depth porch in front of house. And then the IV located closer to the front line, less than the distance, equal to 60% of the front yard. So 60% of 30, 10% would be 3, so it'd be 18 feet,
18.
right? So 30 minus 8 is 22.
22.
So 22 would be greater than the 18, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so they can get within 18 feet of the property line,
But
but
they
they're
can only-
only allowed to do an 8-foot porch
Because of the height, yes.
because of the height.
Yeah.
Do we need to provide for any landscaping that goes in front of the porch to account for the setback? Do we care?
I don't think there's
I don't-
zoning about.
No.
There's no
I think
zoning.
we should get into the landscaping.
Like, you know how we put bushes in front of the porch?
I don't think there's setback requirements on bushes
Okay.
or shrubbery. Is there?
Only
The land-
if you're only at a corner.
Okay.
Oh, okay.
So let's do one more scenario. Let's say we've got a 4-story home. So it's a 2-family home, 2 floors of each, right? So what would a height be for a four-story? Would we say that that's,
48, 40.
I mean, double that, 48 feet?
Yeah, 48 feet, 46, 48 feet.
So the setback's the same. It's a four-story home. Okay, so as structured, not greater than 10 feet or 1/3 of the height. So
48 is 6.
It'll be 10 feet, they'd be max.
as structured, so you could get a 10-foot
16.
depth, right?
16.
And then
That
The
would be
I-
20 feet in the, that would be 20 feet of setback, so they're within the 18 feet.
right,
Now,
okay.
the only issue I'm thinking on this, on the 1/3 height, if it's a single story house, how tall is that gonna be? Are they gonna only be able to put a 4-foot, 3-foot, you know what I mean? It's.
Yeah, no, that's
there might
good. This
be-
is why
there
we're
might
doing
be
the
an
math.
Issue with having a third of, if it's a low roof house, like a low slope roof, and they wanna put a nice porch on it, and all they can do is 2.5 feet or 4
Height
feet.
would be 20, 25 feet, single family.
What if we just made this one aspect applicable to 2-story homes?
Well, okay, that rules out my house.
No, I'm sorry. I mean, if we say this shall be, maybe not
Oh,
2-story.
the third, have that for 2-story.
Yeah,
Because
multiple.
actually, it could be, and are we measuring from the ground up or the
Well,
floor
what's the
up?
point? Is it the peak?
Is it the floor to the peak or is it the ground to the peak? Because some
Average.
are 3 feet off the ground, and then you have, a 8-foot plus a 4-foot attic would be 15, so you could get a 5-foot porch in there.
Talking foundation to building.
Unless we made it a little different for a little different math for a single story.
And then the one aspect we could also do is, the covered porch shall be connected at ground level and/or to the first story, limited to the
I
first
think-
story.
The thing is though, I think with the 1/3 of the height, it's almost, do we need that in there if it's limited to 10-foot max? And then if with the setback, depending on how close you are, I mean, even if you have 1-story, I mean, a 10-foot porch would look really ridiculous on my 1-story house, I think. But I don't know, maybe that's.
I think that might, maybe we need to look a little bit more into it, but I think that might be right, that, front porches aren't supposed to be 20 feet wide,
No.
But if but a small house, a short house, let's say, you have to have it, anything less than 6 feet is unusable.
Yeah.
As a porch. So between 6 and 10, like you said, I think 10 might look a little silly on a small house, but you might find a way really to use it too.
Yeah.
Might be someplace you're in all the time. So we can think about whether we want to in a way over-regulate that. It's kind of saying there's not good ways to do it. Another thing that kind of starts to control on a 1-story house is that you just can't get the roof line to work on a really deep porch. The roof becomes so shallow, that it's kind of hard to do. So it kind of self-regulates a little bit, but I have to give it some more thought. But I think maybe just making a maximum and saying no matter how tall your house is, it can't be more than 10 feet.
Yeah. And then it's up to the design to make it look good and make the roof work.
Yeah, and the setback to the street, I think that's something to keep,
Yeah,
so that might
definitely.
regulate how big it has to be.
Percentage of the setback is good because the closer, if someone's, say, run the numbers and they're 20 feet from it, 60% of that they have to keep. So
Yeah, the further you're required to stay back, the more you have to keep, right?
Yeah.
So there's a percentage equality about that across the different lots.
because on a big 2 or 3 story house, a 10-foot porch wouldn't even look that big. on a small house, it would look huge.
Yeah.
But like you said, Trish, it's kind of self-regulates itself. You're not going to put a box on the front of your house like a big, you know what I mean? They want to make it look, the house look not decent and still be usable.
Yeah, and I'm not saying that I'm not saying that an 8-foot porch is ideal and will always be beautiful, and a 10-foot porch on a small house will always look atrocious. That's not true at all,
Yeah.
right? There's always ways to make it beautiful, and there's always ways to screw it up. So
I mean, so on Romanet 2, isn't that a maximum? No, because if you have a building, if you had a 50-foot building,
right, you can still do no more than 10 feet.
Yeah.
Whichever is less.
yeah, so doesn't that inherently limit it? The maximum is 10 feet depth.
Yeah, no matter how tall your building is,
Yeah.
you can only have 10 feet. But if you have a really small house, short house, you might not even, like I said, you need 6 feet to really consider it a porch that you can put a chair on.
Yeah.
Right.
And so you could put 8 or something that's
Well,
over a curtain.
So let's take this example again, same setup, 30 foot, right? It's a 1-story home that's 15 feet high, right? So 1/3 of that would be 5 feet, which would be an unusable porch. So, and then as it's written, lesser of would push you into a 5-foot, porch. So
if we eliminated that height ratio, they could put a 6 or 8-foot porch on that house.
you could just say not greater than 10 feet and just stop.
Yes, that's what I think.
Yeah.
Strike it, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so it's not greater than 10 feet, and it has to be basically no more than 40% on the way to the setback line. So it does have a second thing controlling it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So if you're closer, even if you have a big house and you're right a lot closer to the street, you're not going to be able to put a 10-foot porch.
Yeah, or if your house is 10 feet from the street and you have a little house, well, you can only do 4 feet, or you just can't do the porch on that house. It's just too small. It's just too close to the street.
Yeah.
So it's not going to allow everybody to put a porch on.
No, there's a lot of
So-
situations where you can't. It's not feasible to do a porch anyway.
Right.
And
This
just
is
to note-
just mainly for we have mostly yards are huge setbacks on a lot of, especially the new stuff, and it's just to help be able to fix it up and do a little more, get out into the street community.
Yeah, I agree, because a lot of times those houses are built really close to that setback line in order to maximize the backyard. And then you can't do a thing to it. Sometimes there's not even a cover to get out of the rain on these houses. I mean, poor design, but that's that's what it is.
Look like monopoly houses, some of them.
Yeah, yeah, they do.
Monopoly houses.
Yep.
Just to note that the smallest front yard setback in Ashland is commercial neighborhood at 15 feet. So that would require the front porch to leave 9 feet in front of it to the
Would
lot.
basically mean you.
That'd be
couldn't do
6
it,
feet.
right?
That would,
Yeah, they
yeah.
can have 6 feet if they're right on the setback line.
Yeah.
And I have some neighbors too that have 6-foot porches because that's right up to where they can do it now. And it's, they fit some chairs there, but they really never use them. It's not comfortable.
Yeah, I mean, the porch on my house on Olive Street, I think was 6 feet.
Yeah.
And we put some rocking chairs out there. We were there all the time. But I wouldn't have wanted it to be any smaller.
Yeah, and it looks. I think it looks better. I mean, than a square house, it can look better. And if you're coming in, like you said, out of the weather, a place to stop, and people come over, stop, and be out of the rain or the snow while they're ringing the doorbell. It's good,
I agree. I think the whole bylaw is a great thing. I mean, it's definitely a way to enrich neighborhoods, to get people outside, to talk to their neighbors as they go by. I mean, that's what front porches do.
Yeah.
So.
Plus, you
Good
got to
job.
fit the
Good job,
character
Bill.
of the neighborhood too.
Well, you see front porches on all kinds of neighborhoods,
Mhm.
very dense neighborhoods and very loose neighborhoods. You know, I get requests for them all the time on all different kinds of neighborhoods and all different kinds of houses because they want that. They want a place to sit out and watch for their kids getting off the school bus or, you know, whatever it is. So,
For the process, it's good for a residential one, almost 2-lane road, neighborhood roads. It's right there to have the neighbors be together.
Absolutely.
Exactly.
So, so, I- so the one question I have is the applicability of this bylaw is, Peter, you said at the outset, Res A was the target zone for this, or
No.
sorry, Claire, can you correct me? Sorry.
So I was just using Res A setbacks as an example. And you know what?
Okay.
I was wrong to do so because a Res A front yard setback is 40 feet and we picked the number 30 to run through the exercise.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and so really I think we did a great job and the board did a great job of going through it and nailing it down. But no, this would be applicable to, you know, we want to make it applicable to Res B, you know, Res A, Res B, you know,
All residential,
all residential areas, I would say.
all residential zones.
All residential zones, correct. And I think that would include the Ashland 80, you know, Ashland downtown overlay district, which is, you know, within subsections B and C, there is a lot of pre-existing, non-conforming, pre-war dense housing and probably some older housing stock, which may not have that front yard setback, but obviously this gives them an option if they do and if they can't fit that front porch in. So I think
I mean, cutting down the bureaucracy of doing something and adding, I mean, it's a good thing. I think you certainly said that at the beginning, and it's definitely great.
Yeah, no, it makes everyone, you know, if if anybody wants to come in and make a front porch, it makes everyone's life a lot easier because, you know, you're
Get a
going
contractor and a permit and you build it as long as
Yeah.
it's within the things rather than have to go through the whole process of.
yeah, I know, and it fits in. A lot of towns are going this way, and you know, yes, Dale said it right. You have a contractor, you have a builder, and you can come in and apply for a building permit. You're not going in for a variance through the ZBA.
So one thing I think about here, I thought the comments about the height here and being specific that under no circumstances can you put anything above it. Like, would it be productive for the purposes of trying to deliver the best quality, the best product? Would there be language here that the roofing material covering the porch, you know, should be consistent with the roofing material on the existing structure? No, Tristan. Okay, why?
no, because a really nice design feature that usually gets priced out is when you have asphalt shingles, but you want to put a metal roof on.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, which is nice. What a question, I'm not sure if I can answer it today, might be that maybe the roof has to be pitched to at least some degree. That would eliminate the ability to use it kind of for anything else up there. A flat porch roof, those don't typically look great, you know.
Yeah. They're drainage disasters and snow disasters if it's not.
Well, yeah, for little small things like that, obviously flat roofs work great on bigger buildings, and even residential buildings, you know, like triple deckers, you know, say. But for a porch, it's not usually the right thing.
Okay, so that's something we would maybe think about adding here. Is that a safe note to take here?
Yeah, I mean, it just requires some thought because is a slope an 8-12 slope? Is a slope a 2-12 slope? You know, there's a lot of variety in there, and I'm not sure right now what the details should be.
Yeah, and depending on the roof of the existing house, if it's really low and they're adding it, it could be, you don't want to limit them to where they can't do it because of the roof.
Yeah, yeah,
Mhm.
because it could be a perfectly
we
fine
just
looking
put-
roof at a low pitch.
Yeah,
Put
what
a
if you have
non-
windows that are tight to where,
non-flat-
you know?
That's right.
non-flat roof.
Okay, all right, that's fine. Just throwing that out there. Okay.
Sure, Emma will come up with something.
I guess we should look at the different possible scenarios for a roof, because I guess that if you're taking that clause of the height restrictions off, then this flexibility on the kind of roof will trigger like, okay, I'm not going to be able to match the existing roof heights, so I'm going higher or things like that. So we should probably look at possible scenarios of what roof types can be, and then see if we need to add that restriction back on the height level limits.
Yeah, it might be something like that, the roof can't be higher than 1.5 times the height of the first story or something like that, so that you can't have a really high roof over your porch. That looks ridiculous as well. It has to be usable, but again, it's getting a little too
It gets specific, and I think it's challenging for, like what Dale said, for a single family home, which already has the height limitation out there.
And you, because some, we all think of the front porch as just sloping out, and the porch is all across the front, but somebody might want to add one that just goes to part of the front and it's a gabled in porch.
Right, that's
So
right.
it could be, there's just,
It gets complicated.
in other words, this is a lot more, I said at the beginning, it's really simple. A couple of lines here, we're gonna make it easy.
It's
for
zoning. There
everybody.
is no such thing as simple, dude.
Here we are. And it's all good points. It's great. I appreciate all the input. It's
It would be helpful, maybe for a follow-up discussion on this, and I'm happy to put this together, is to just to gather a whole bunch of different pictures of front porches. That'd be pretty easy for me to do. Not necessarily local, but just, just pulling different types. And then we can kind of say, what would our bylaw cover this? Would our bylaw cover that? And
Good
just so we
idea.
can kind of get that variety in our heads, and I can show those next time.
okay. I think that's a good idea. And then everyone else is welcome to do that too. Pick up pictures of different, because you never, you think of all the standard porches, and then somebody comes up and does something like, oh, what the heck is that? Well, it's a porch, but
Yeah, I keep on my house site, I keep collections of architectural details. So I'll just have another folder labeled front porches, and I'll use it in my work. So it's not a problem.
We can get our Pinterest rocking here,
Yeah, I don't do Pinterest so much because the quality of the pictures is unregulated, but
Yeah, got it.
all right, well,
So should I, so obviously I was just scribe here. Is it, I'm just going to send this back to you, Dale, Peter, and Emma, just so
have our notes.
we have this as
I
notes.
know I took notes by hand, but if you want to send this back to us, that'd be awesome.
Sure,
And
yeah.
then we'll kind of go from there.
Great.
Okay, I'll do that. Yeah.
Okay.
All right, well, thanks. That's a start.
yeah.
So administrative matters, future meetings, public hearings.
Yeah, so just to kind of give everyone an update, the next meeting, planning board meeting is obviously in 2 weeks. I believe that is the 23rd. I'm pulling up my calendar. I'm sorry, that's the 25th of February. So we'll have a typical Zoom meeting.
And then the walkthrough, potential walkthrough.
The walkthrough will be the day before on the 24th. So we'll be seeing a lot of each other that week. So have fun during February vacation, which is obviously next week, and President's Day is on Monday. The one new application that the planning board did receive was for Zero Magunko, which is, it was a project that was approved in 2016 by the planning board. I think, Dale, you were the planning board member at the time. That application, the applicant actually failed to act on that permit. and so he is refiling. He actually failed to act on the permit. However, he still has a live conservation permit, but it is a vacant piece of property right at the beginning of Magunko Road. And he is looking in, it's actually zoned industrial, and he's looking to put kind of a contractor bays in
This-
again.
Pete, is it the same? Is he just submitting the same plan, or is he?
It's the
doing
same plan.
something
It's the same plan.
different? Okay.
Yep. It's the same plan. Previously in 2016, it went through the planning board process. It also went through the Conservation Commission and went to design review. And but it the permit was, the site plan approval process failed, and it lapsed. It didn't fail, but it just lapsed. I said over time. And so we'll have we're going to go through the application, Emma and I, this week. Yeah, we'll set the date, and I believe we'll probably be on, sometime in March, early, the first meeting in March. Other matters that involve the board.
Before
Yep.
you move on, Peter, 1 second. What was the address of that project again?
It's actually 0 Magunko.
Thank you.
Yeah. It's right at Cherry and Magunko,
It's right at the
there,
corner
that-
of Cherry and, yes.
between the Magunko and the train tracks.
Got it.
Strip there.
Thank you.
As part of the application, I'll present, there's a 25, the town hired a Stantec, and they're trying to, the town has a transportation improvements project to redo that road rail crossing there. So I believe that the 25% voucher aren't shared with the applicant. I actually shared them with the applicant, and obviously I'll bring those to the board meeting and share those with everybody, just to make sure that obviously any project that is being done is in respect with a transportation improvements project, which I know is on that list, the tip list. There's so many.
Frozen. Okay, while Pete's sleeping, I just want to remind everybody that we need to, we have to pick.
On my back.
Yeah, you're back. Go ahead.
Okay.
No, I was bringing up to make sure we remember to assign, pick 2 people for the 40R project subcommittee.
Yeah. So just leading up to that, so 10 to 50 Main Street, which is the 40R project that we met with the Board of Selectmen. I can tell you today that the town has hired a woman who's very knowledgeable about economic development and 40R projects, April Anderson. And she is going to be she's asked to reach out to planning board members to kind of have conversations with planning board members concerning the development, their thoughts on the development, their thoughts on the downtown process. And so therefore, leading into that, Dale, the planning board and the select board are starting to put together a design liaison, a group. And I think they are looking for 2 members of the planning board, 2 members of the Board of Selectmen, and a member from the design review committee. I do not believe, Emma, correct me if I'm wrong, the design review committee has actually voted on putting a person on the committee. And is that correct?
That's correct. It'll be on their agenda next week.
And so we can talk about this right now, and/or we can put it on the agenda for the next meeting. However, it's up to the planning board members. This design liaison committee could potentially, meet with the 2 members of the Board of Selectmen and a member of the design review committee, and it's going to be used as a sounding board at this point to help steer the project as the 40R process not begin. I wouldn't say begins, but continues on. So Dale, do you want to lead the discussion, or do you want to
sure.
people's
First of all, I was just going to see if anyone's interested. I know Trish had some interest in that, and Deepa had some interest. And I know Joe's really busy on all his committees, but
I think Trisha and Deepa should do it for sure.
Well, what, anyone else is interested. And it's probably gonna be a while. I don't know what their meeting schedule is gonna be or anything, but this project is probably gonna take some time.
Yeah, this
because
project
it's a whole new thing, and they're making a development deal with the town, correct? Am I correct with that?
Yeah, so right now it's going to be a long process.
Yeah, you guys could be like retired before.
I
Yeah,
have to first get my seat back on the planning board this June.
Well, then if Deepa and Trish are interested and nobody else is thinking about it, maybe we should go ahead and just appoint them.
Mhm.
I just need to know what the exact name of the subcommittee is.
I do not know the exact name or if it
You
has
can go
been
by the street,
titled at this
by the
point.
address.
Lakshmi, just real quick, Lakshmi, do you have any interest or?
No, I think Deepa and Trish have the
Okay,
background to be part of that committee.
okay. And I
Because
will say, everything is with the meeting would meet as a, in requirements, I believe, of the public meeting. And obviously any information that is submitted is going to be transferred out to all planning board members and talked about at the planning board meetings.
Mhm.
So,
And the good thing about it is that because they're making a development deal, they want to kind of to have some kind of a direction before it comes to the planning board for a permit,
Review.
right?
mhm.
For site plan review. So that they don't come up with a whole project that everybody likes and they draw up the drawings and they send it to the planning board and the planning board doesn't like any of it. If we're involved with it, then we can kind of guide them in the direction.
These are big 40R projects are big projects. And this
Yeah.
is a, I think everyone knows 1050 Main Street is a very important piece of property in the downtown,
Mhm.
and it historically has been, and it hopefully will play a future in the role of downtown Ashland. So,
Well, there's a motion to appoint Deepa and Trisha to the subcommittee for, what's the address? 10
10 to
10 to
50 Main
15.
Street,
10 to 15 Main Street.
10 to 50
40R,
Main Street.
10 to 50 Main Street 40R project.
So moved.
Second that.
All in favor?
Trisha Kendall, I.
Lakshmi Krishnan, I.
Deepa Venkatai.
Joe Rubertone, aye.
Dale Buchanan, aye. Passes 5-0-0.
Great.
Awesome. Thank you, you guys, because I know you,
Thanks for doing.
yeah.
this.
Thank you.
And just so everyone knows, I think I mentioned this to Peter. After, was it the last planning board meeting or 2 planning board meetings? Whenever we discussed this building, the next day or the day after that, the architect from Gorman Richardson contacted me via email. I'm not sure, got my email address, and just, he seemed to be, enthusiastic about talking to, the planning board and getting more input, and seemed open to suggestions. So I think it'll be, I think it'll be a good discussion. So.
Good. And that's an important.
And actually that architect
that's
used to have his offices for 15 years, had his offices in that building.
Yeah.
So they know it really well.
Was
So
there
I think
also a
that's
historic
cool.
story of Ashland that came by right after that meeting?
Cliff Wilson sent that, I think.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Or
And it's an important project because it's right when you come into town. I mean, that's what you see when you hit town there.
Right.
Downtown, so it
Main Street.
needs to be done right. So thank you very much, Trish and Deepa.
I think it'll be good.
All right.
Okay, anything else? Pete?
I think that's all I have on my agenda of updates. Yeah, I'm all set.
Anybody else got any announcements or anything to make? Okay, then is there a motion to end the meeting at 9:01 p.m.?
So moved.
Second that.
All in favor?
Trisha Kendall, I.
Lakshmi Krishnan, aye.
Deepa Venkatai.
Joe Joan, aye.
Bill Buchanan, aye. It passes 5-0-0. Thank you, everybody, and good night.
All right.
Good
Have a great
night,
night,
everybody.
everybody.
Good job tonight, everybody. Good job.
Bye.
Thank you so
Thank
much,
you.
Joe, for taking notes.
Yeah.